Let me show you how you can deploy your Fabric items to dev, test, production, so that you never have to do that manually ever again. This is Fabric deployment pipelines. Let's dive into my laptop. Okay, so here on my laptop screen, what we are seeing is a workspace. It is called that Fabric guy and it is running on a Fabric capacity. Therefore, you see this diamond that says it's Fabric content or it contains Fabric content. And I use this workspace for most of my demos, both here on YouTube as well as when I'm speaking on conferences. Now, what if I need to put some of these items into another workspace? Maybe this is my development workspace that I'm just working with and doing tests and iterations with. And then I want to publish to end users that are not really interested in all these notebook 1, notebook 2, notebook 3, all this sandbox behavior that I'm displaying here. Maybe they want to see what's definitely going into production and they only want to use that. So first of all, what we need to do is give them a new workspace. So let's go to workspaces and click here at the bottom on new workspace. We call this one that Fabric guy production. And this will be our main production workspace. Now, we have to make sure that this is actually a Fabric workspace and that it is running, in this case, on a capacity called my TFG demo capacity. And we will apply. Now here we have an empty workspace. We can go back into our original workspace, that Fabric guy. And from here, what I will do is I will say, okay, I need to create a pipeline in order to move items from my development workspace into my production workspace. So we click on create deployment pipeline and we call this one that Fabric guy deployment. Click next. And here we have to figure out what the stages are of our pipeline. Now, by default, Microsoft will suggest you can do development, test, and production. In practice, you can have many more steps in between, or you can have fewer steps in between. You need at least two. You need at least your source workspace and your target workspace. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the final one. Development here will just stay as development, and production will be production. And now, mind you, these are just the names of the stages of our deployment pipeline. We're not connecting to any workspaces yet. That's what we're going to do next. So we click create and continue. And now we have to assign workspaces to this stage. So for development, I will look for that Fabric guy, assign a workspace, and I get a message saying that these semantic models are not supported for deployment pipelines. Now I go to production and I will assign a workspace that says that Fabric guy production. And that Fabric guy production is an empty workspace. We just created it. So when we now look at our development stage in here that's connected to that Fabric guy, what we will see actually is all the objects that are in that workspace. Then when we go here to production, what we can see then is that we can deploy from development. We can deploy from many different stages. In this case, it's only accepting input from the development stage. So we cannot select anything else than development. Now from here, we can see all the objects that are in the development workspace and that we only have in the source. So in the development workspace, it is not in the target. As you can see, semantic models are being shown here. The semantic models that you were seeing that were not supported are the default semantic models that used to be connected to a lakehouse when you created a new lakehouse. That's a feature that has been deprecated a while ago, and these types of semantic models are not supported for deployment pipelines. All right, now let's say that I want to deploy my lakehouse gold. Let's say I deploy my lakehouse gold. And I want to deploy a notebook. Let's find our notebooks here. We can filter for types and we can even filter for keywords. So that's actually quite cool. Let's only look at our notebooks right now. Yeah, let's do the V order one. So we select that one. And now we can see that we have, did we also select the Lakehouse Gold? Yep, we now see that we have a Lakehouse Gold selected and we have our V-order notebook selected. So we can see that there is a deploy to button in here. We cannot compare because there is no two versions of these objects. So we simply hit deploy. We will deploy these two objects and we confirm by clicking deploy. Now the deployment pipeline is running and this might take a little while. In the meanwhile, sit back, relax and enjoy. All right, so the deployment has been successful. We can see here that we have a successful deployment, and also when we look now at the objects that we have, we can see that the gold lakehouse and the vOrder notebook are the same as in the source. So when we click here, we can see there is. So we see that in the source we have a lot of objects that are only in the source, not in the target, and we have these two objects that are in both. Now let's go look at that Fabric Guy production. So we go there, and indeed here we have now a vOrder folder with a vOrder notebook. Let's look at that notebook, and it's connected to objects. It is connected to a new Lakehouse vOrder in that Fabric Guy workspace. That's in the old workspace, and it is also connected to that Fabric Guy production workspace, as you can see here. So the connection to the gold lakehouse was deployed, both the lakehouse as well as the notebook, and then the default connection was also deployed. So that's actually really cool. We do not have to go in and swap out those connections. That's really cool. Now here we have our notebook, and it contains all kinds of different examples of vOrdering settings. It doesn't really matter. Let's see what happens if we want to do an incremental change now. We go into our development workspace again. Here we will find our vOrder notebook. It's this one. And let's put in some markdown header here. vOrder demo. And here use SQL to change table properties. All right. So now and then remove the empty cell because that doesn't really make sense. Okay, so now we have changed our notebook. We've removed empty cells. We've added some markdown, and the notebook is saved automatically. Now what happens if we go into our deployment pipeline? We can go to vOrder, and the pipeline will automatically show that there is a difference now from source. So here we see that we have new objects that are only in the source, not in production. Here we have the same, and here we have different from source. So if we want to deploy these changes that we've created, we do not have to copy paste all the things manually, or we do not have to go into the production notebook and start writing the same changes that we've done, because that is very, very tricky to get right. So what we do instead, we stay here in the deployment pipeline, we select our vOrder notebook, and we hit deploy. Now from here, a notebook deployment will take just a couple of seconds. The content will be copied to the target workspace, and we can see that our deployment has been successful. Now, if we want to validate that, I mean, I believe that it was successful, but let's validate. Trust but verify. We go to vOrder, and we are here in our production workspace, and we see our markdown in here. We can see our markdown in there, and we see that the empty cell was removed. So this is one of the ways that you can do deployment pipelines with Microsoft Fabric. I use this a lot for customers with simpler setups. So where we have maybe development, test, and then production. This is a very good way to do change tracking. This is not the same thing as source control, mind you. So the Git integration with Microsoft Fabric is used for source control, where you can see the changes on a code, on the code that you write on a line-by-line level. That is source control. This is not source control. This is just deployment pipelines. This is a lightweight solution to work with development, test, and production environments. And this is something that I advise most of my customers to use when they start with Fabric. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, press like and hit subscribe. And I'll see you next week when we do another video on Microsoft Fabric.